The Second World War was a great and terrible fire. It did not begin in our land in Nigeria, but its heat was felt even here, touching the lives of our grandfathers and great-grandfathers. Imagine a big argument in a very large, crowded market, one that starts between two powerful traders but soon pulls everyone in. This war was like that, but for the whole world. It was a time of deep sadness and great courage, a story of nations fighting over land, power, and ideas about how people should live. This conflict, which lasted from 1939 to 1945, changed the map of the world and the stories families would tell for generations to come, shaping the world we know today in ways both big and small, seen and unseen. The seeds of this war were planted long before the first shots were fired. It started with a feeling of anger and unfairness. After a previous big war, the First World War, Germany was blamed and punished very harshly. They lost land, money, and pride. Imagine being told you are the sole cause of a village fight and must pay for all the broken pots, even those you did not break. This made many Germans very unhappy. A man named Adolf Hitler rose to power, and he spoke to this anger. He promised to make Germany strong and proud again. He had dangerous ideas about his country being better than all others, and he began to take over neighboring lands, breaking the rules that were meant to keep peace. Hitler's actions were like a person who starts by taking a small piece of his neighbor's farm, and when no one stops him, he takes a little more, and then more again. At first, other powerful countries in Europe, like Britain and France, watched him. They hoped he would be satisfied and stop. They did not want another terrible war, so they practiced what was called appeasement, which is like telling a troublesome child, yes, just to keep them quiet for a little while. But Hitler was not a child to be quieted. His hunger for more land and more power only grew bigger. He did not believe in living peacefully alongside others. He believed in conquering them. The final moment, the thing that made war unavoidable, came in 1939. Hitler decided to invade Poland, a country that Britain and France had promised to protect. It was a promise they could no longer ignore. When German soldiers marched into Poland, it was the last straw. It was the moment the big market argument turned into a full-blown fight that no one could walk away from. Britain and France declared war on Germany, and the world was pulled into the most destructive conflict in its history. The fire had been lit, and its flames would spread across continents, from the snows of Russia to the deserts of North Africa, reaching even our own shores. In this great global conflict, the world split into two major teams, like two powerful football clubs competing in a final match. The first team was called the Allied Powers, or the Allies. Think of them as a large family of different nations who came together to stop a common threat. The main members of this family were Great Britain, the country that ruled Nigeria at the time, the United States of America with its many factories and people, and the Soviet Union, a vast country that is now Russia and its neighbors. Many other countries joined them, including France, China, and Canada, all united by the goal of stopping the aggression. On the other side was the second team, known as the Axis powers. They were the ones who started the fight, led by ambitions to expand and control. The leader of this group was Germany, under the iron fist of Adolf Hitler. His main partners were Italy, led by a man named Benito Mussolini, who also dreamed of a new Roman Empire, and Japan, a powerful island nation in Asia that wanted to control its entire region. These three countries signed a pact, a promise to help one another achieve their goals of conquest. They believed their nations were superior and had the right to rule over others, a very dangerous and harmful idea that caused immense suffering. The fight between these two sides was not just about land, it was a fight over ideas. The Allies, for the most part, believed in freedom and the right of countries to rule themselves, even though some, like Britain, had colonies like Nigeria. The Axis powers, however, believed in fascism, an idea where the nation and its leader are all powerful and individual rights mean very little. They celebrated military strength and saw war as a noble thing. This clash of beliefs was at the very heart of the conflict. It was a struggle to decide what kind of world people would live in. one where nations cooperated, or one where the strongest simply took what they wanted. Nigeria, being a British colony, was automatically on the side of the Allies. It was not a choice our people made for themselves. The British king was our king, and so his war became our war. Nigerian soldiers were called upon to wear the British uniform and fight for the British Empire. They did not fight to protect Lagos or Kano directly from German invasion. Instead, they were sent to faraway places, to fight in the jungles of Burma in Asia and the dry lands of East Africa, for a cause that was decided for them in London. They fought alongside British, Indian and other African soldiers, a part of the vast Allied machine of war. Even though the bombs were not falling on our cities in Nigeria, the war changed life here in very real ways. The war effort needed resources, and our land was rich. Our palm oil, our tin from the mines in Jos, our rubber, all these things were taken in large quantities to support the British Army. Food was sometimes scarce in our markets because so much of it was sent to feed the soldiers. Prices for everyday goods went up, making life harder for ordinary families. It was a silent contribution, a sacrifice made not with guns, but with the sweat of our farmers and miners, a sacrifice that fueled a war happening thousands of miles away. The biggest impact, of course, was on the men who went to fight. Over 45,000 Nigerian soldiers joined the Royal West African Frontier Force to serve the British Empire. They were young men, fathers and sons from villages and towns across the country, who had perhaps never traveled beyond their own region. They were sent to face unimaginable dangers in places they had only heard of in stories. They fought with bravery, earning respect for their skill and endurance, especially in the difficult jungle campaigns in Burma. Their experiences changed them forever. They saw the world, but they also saw the terrible face of war, a memory they carried in their hearts long after they returned home. The war affected all of Africa, not just Nigeria. Battles were fought on African soil, especially in North Africa, in places like Egypt and Libya. In East Africa, our soldiers helped to push the Italians out of Ethiopia, helping an African kingdom regain its freedom. The war showed African people a different side of the white man. They saw him bleed, they saw him afraid, and they fought alongside him as equals on the battlefield. This experience planted a seed in their minds. They began to ask a simple but powerful question. If we are good enough to fight and die for the freedom of the British Empire, why are we not good enough to be free ourselves? When the war finally ended and the soldiers came home, they brought this new way of thinking with them. They had seen that the world was bigger than their colony, and they had fought for the idea of liberty. Their return gave a great energy to the movement for independence in Nigeria and across Africa. The war had weakened the great European empires like Britain and France. They had spent so much money and lost so many people that they could no longer hold on to their colonies as tightly as before. The war, in a strange and indirect way, hurried our journey towards independence, which we finally achieved in 1960. Remembering this war is important, not just as a story from a history book, but as a lesson for our lives today. It teaches us about the danger of letting one person or one group have too much power. Hitler's rise shows how easily a nation can be led down a dark path when people are angry and looking for someone to blame for their problems. It reminds us to be careful of leaders who speak of us versus them, who divide people instead of uniting them. The peace we enjoy is fragile, like a clay pot, and it can be shattered by hatred and the ambition for power if we are not vigilant. The war also teaches us a powerful lesson about unity and sacrifice. The Allied nations, despite their many differences, came together to defeat a common evil. This shows that when people cooperate, they can overcome even the greatest challenges. We saw this spirit in our own Nigerian soldiers who fought alongside people from different tribes and backgrounds for a shared purpose. In a country like ours, with its beautiful diversity, this lesson is crucial. It reminds us that we are stronger when we stand together as Nigerians, rather than separating into smaller groups. Our shared future depends on this unity. Furthermore, the story of World War II is a reminder of the true cost of conflict. The war was not a glorious adventure. It was years of suffering, loss, and destruction on a scale the world had never seen. Millions of people, soldiers and ordinary civilians, men, women, and children, lost their lives. Cities were turned to dust. Families were torn apart forever. By remembering this immense human cost, we understand that war should always be the very last resort, an option to be avoided at all costs. It teaches us to value peace, to work for it, and to resolve our disagreements through dialogue and understanding, not through violence. Finally, for us in Nigeria, the war holds a special lesson about our own identity and freedom. It was a turning point that helped fuel our desire for self-rule. It taught our forefathers that freedom is not something that is given. It is something that must be demanded and fought for. Remembering their role in the war is to remember our own strength and resilience. It is a part of our story, a chapter that shows our connection to the wider world and our long, proud journey to becoming an independent nation. The echoes of that distant war still shape our present, reminding us of the price of freedom and the importance of guarding it closely.